Welcome. Today we will be learning about fractions. This is just an introduction to what fractions are. We'll start off with a fraction that may look familiar in class, 3 and over 4. Now, there are some ways that we can name a fraction, but before we do, let's learn the parts of a fraction. The 3 is at the top, we notice, and this is called the numerator. The number at the bottom, this is what we'd like to call the denominator. Notice D means down, so it helps us to remember where it belongs. Now, this line that we've seen in the past, we learned in the past that it was called divided by. So really, there are three ways for us to name a fraction. So when we think about fractions, the normal way we might hear this being spoken is we'll hear the word 3/4. But notice we have a numerator and a denominator. So another way we can say this is we could say 3 divided by 4. And finally, we can say 3 over 4. All three of these ways would be a correct way of stating a fraction. Another way to remember fractions, so if we have 3 over 4, we can draw a picture to represent it, and we will here in a minute. But remember that 3 is only part of the number, and 4 is what we call the whole. So when we think about a fraction is always less than 1. Remember that. A fraction, well, perhaps we should call this what it is. We call this a proper fraction. So a proper fraction is always less than 1. So the way I like to think about this is I like to draw a picture. So imagine that we have a cookie. My favorite are chocolate chips. So I'm going to turn this into a chocolate chip cookie. Okay. Now, with my chocolate chip cookies, often they're too big, so I might break them in half. Notice I still have one cookie, but now I have two pieces. Here, though, we have a fraction, and it is not in 2 pieces. It's actually in 4 pieces. And we know this because of the denominator. So the whole thing, this whole cookie, represents one whole. So one whole cookie. Okay, and we've broken it into 4 pieces. All 4 pieces represents the whole cookie. But now let's imagine that I want to share my cookie, but I love chocolate chip cookies, so I don't want to share too much. I might break my cookie in half and then in half again. I'm going to eat 3 of these small pieces. So let's say I eat this one, 1, 2, 3. Oh, I don't know why those are going away. So I'm eating 3 pieces of cookie. And I'm giving away 1 piece of that cookie. So I'm just going to give away this part. Okay? How we would represent this then is we can say, well, oops, make it a little smaller. Well, I ate, so I can say Tim ate 3/4 of the cookie. And I gave away 1/4 of the cookie. Later on, as we look into addition, what we'll see is that if we put these pieces together at the top, if we add these pieces together, they will then equal the entire piece of the cookie. So there are 4 pieces in total. Those are 4 little parts. And the whole cookie had 4 parts in total. That was the whole thing. So we know that 4 divided by 4 represents 1, and that's why we say it's 1 part. Okay. Another way to represent a fraction might be using something we call bar modeling. And again, if we draw a bar model or a bar, we want to know how many bars do I have. So here's one bar, so we can think of it like a bar of chocolate maybe. And I would separate this bar into 4 pieces because I see here there are 4 parts of it. Or sorry, 4 parts in this entire pizza, entire chocolate bar. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, how many pieces do I want to have of this chocolate now? I want 3 pieces of that chocolate. So again, I can say I want 1, 2, and 3. And so we can see that I have 3 pieces of the chocolate bar and I still have 1 piece left. This is how we often think of fractions. Notice the fraction amount that I have is less than 1. I have less than 1 bar of chocolate. I have less than 1 cookie. So fractions, remember we have numerator over denominator. So numerator over denominator. Recognize how we might read the fractions. So this is how we'll read the fractions. We can read it as 3/4, 3 divided by 4, 3 over 4. Or we can think of it as whatever part I have is at the top, and I'm going to be dividing it by the whole piece. Let's take a look at one other example just before we leave here. How might we say this fraction? How might we say this fraction? And how might we say this fraction? Okay, so the way I might say this fraction is I might say I have 1 over 2. I could say I have 1/2, or I could say this is 1 divided by 2. All are correct ways of saying the fraction. If I were to draw this fraction, if I wanted to use, if I wanted to use the bar model, I can draw a bar, and how many pieces will I have? Well, it tells me in the bottom how many pieces I need to cut it into. So I will have 2 pieces for the whole bar, but how many pieces, how many parts do I get to keep? Well, I get to keep 1 part of it. So I would just color in 1 part. And this represents 1/2 of the bar. Same thing with the cookie. If I have the cookie, I split it in half, and I have 1 piece. Okay. How would I say number 2? Well, number 2, we see we have the part of 5 and the whole piece. Well, there will be 6 little pieces in total. So again, if I were to draw a model, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops. So I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the whole. How many pieces do I get to keep? Well, I get to keep 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is assuming all those pieces are the same. Again, if I were to have a pie, I would have 6 pieces. I need 6 here, not 8. Okay. And again, how many of those pieces do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. We can read this as 5/6. We can read this as, again, 5/6, 5 over 6, or 5 divided by 6. All are correct ways. Finally, the last one. This is a challenging one to draw, but we have 4/7. A bar model might be easier. We have 4/7. Again, we can say 4/7, 4 over 7, or 4 divided by 7. All are correct. How many pieces would I need? Well, hopefully we see there's a 7 in the bottom for the whole thing, so I will need 7 pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Oops, I think I just made 8. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this part here. There we go. They should be about the same size. And how many pieces do I have? Again, I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. That tells me how many I should have left, right? So I have 4 over 7. And then how many pieces are left? We can see there are 3 pieces left out of the 7. There is 1 piece left out of the 6 up here and 1 piece out of the 2. Later on, what we'll learn again is that if we add these pieces together, we should get 1 entire piece. Okay. Give the pie one a try on your own and see how you get along with it. The 7 pieces of pie makes it a little bit more challenging. But hopefully by the end of now, you'll know how to name a fraction. Remember, numerator divided by denominator. So 3 divided by 4, 3/4, or 3 over 4. Remember that a proper fraction is always less than 1. We'll learn about the other types of fractions later on this term.